I didn't expect her to look at me like that, like I was something she hadn't planned on wanting. The cafe was almost empty, soft amber light flickering against the rain-slicked windows. She sat by the corner, hair slightly undone from the drizzle outside, her coat draped over the chair beside her. I'd seen her before, the quiet woman who never rushed, always reading, always alone. But tonight, her eyes met mine before I could look away. When I finally walked over, it wasn't confidence that moved me. It was something quieter, something like gravity. "Someone's in your seat," I said, pointing to the chair where her coat rested. Her lips curved, a trace of amusement. "Then I suppose you'll have to share it." I sat down, pretending I didn't notice how close her hand was to mine on the table. She smelled faintly of rain and coffee, warm, steady, and a little intoxicating. Every small movement she made carried an ease I didn't have yet, the kind that comes from knowing who you are, or maybe from having nothing left to prove. She spoke with pauses, like every word was chosen carefully, but her eyes kept saying more than her voice dared. I caught myself studying the small details, the silver ring she turned absent-mindedly on her finger, the quiet rhythm of her breathing, the way she looked away only when I looked too long. When she leaned forward to reach her cup, her fingers brushed mine, light, unplanned, but enough to set off something that neither of us could take back. I don't remember what we talked about after that. Only that she laughed once softly, then stopped, as if realizing how it sounded in the empty room. Outside, the rain thickened. Inside, the silence between us became something alive. She tilted her head slightly, studying me. "You're too quiet," she said. "Maybe I just don't want to say the wrong thing," I answered. Her smile faded, replaced by something else, curiosity maybe. Or warning. "You think there's a wrong thing to say?" "I think," I said slowly, "there are things people aren't supposed to say out loud." Her gaze didn't move. "Like what?" I swallowed. "Like how you look at someone and know it's a mistake, but you still can't stop." She didn't laugh this time. The air between us thinned. A pulse of thunder rolled in the distance. Then she leaned in closer, close enough for her breath to brush my cheek. "Don't tell anyone," she whispered. Her words weren't playful. They were careful. Heavy. The kind that settled deep in your chest and changed the rhythm of your breathing. For a moment, all I could hear was the rain against the glass, the faint hum of the old ceiling fan, and the sound of my heart trying to steady itself. I wanted to ask what she meant, but before I could, the bell over the cafe door chimed. A man stepped in, shaking off his umbrella, glancing toward her. Her eyes flickered toward him, then back to me, and something unreadable passed through her expression. "Go," she murmured under her breath, almost too softly to hear. I hesitated, frozen. She gave me the faintest smile, the kind that hides more than it reveals. "I'll see you again," she said. And just like that, she turned toward the man, her voice shifting into polite, distant warmth. I left before he saw me, but her whisper stayed, "Don't tell anyone." Outside, the rain didn't stop. Neither did the thought of her hand brushing mine. I didn't see her again for 2 weeks. Not that I didn't look. I passed the cafe more times than I should have, pretending I was there for the coffee, pretending I didn't still hear her whisper. When I finally did see her again, it wasn't where I expected. It was late afternoon, a quiet bookstore 2 streets away. She was standing near the travel section, tracing the spine of a book with her finger, lost in thought. She noticed me first. "You follow books too?" she asked, a hint of surprise softening her voice. "I follow what feels unfinished," I said before I could stop myself. That earned me a look, the kind that lingers a little too long. Then she smiled, slow and guarded. "You shouldn't say things like that." "I know," I said. "But I meant it." Her eyes lowered for a second, as if those words had touched a place she'd kept closed for a long time. I wanted to ask what she was thinking, but she spoke before I could. "I used to come here with my husband," she said, running her hand along the shelf. "He liked books about places we never went." The word husband landed heavy, though she said it like it didn't belong to her anymore. I didn't ask what happened. Some silences aren't meant to be broken by strangers. Used to? I asked quietly. She nodded once. Years ago. Life moves in directions you stop choosing. Something in her tone, soft, resigned, made me forget my own defenses. I get that, I said. My last relationship ended because I didn't know what I wanted, until it was too late. She looked at me then, really looked, as if measuring the truth in what I'd said. You're too young to talk like that, she murmured. Maybe, I said, but you don't sound surprised. Her laugh was quiet, unsteady. She turned, stepping closer, close enough that I caught the scent of her perfume, something faintly floral with a trace of cedar. I'm not surprised, she said. Just reminded. For a moment, we stood too close for it to be accidental. The air between us felt warmer than it should. My pulse was too loud in my ears. Her hand moved, maybe to adjust her scarf, maybe not, and brushed against my shoulder. The touch was fleeting, almost an apology. But she didn't move away. You make it difficult to keep things simple, she said softly. I didn't know they were supposed to be, I replied. She looked up at me then, not with the guarded confidence she usually carried, but with something rawer. Something human. And then, just as suddenly, she stepped back. The space between us filled with the quiet rustle of pages and the distant hum of the ceiling light. Don't look at me like that, she whispered. How am I looking? Like you're trying to remember everything, she said, voice barely above a breath. Maybe I was. She turned to leave, her hand brushing against mine as she passed, a touch so small, it could have been nothing. But it wasn't. Same cafe, she said over her shoulder. Tomorrow. Then she was gone. And for the first time in weeks, the silence she left behind didn't feel empty. It felt like the start of something neither of us was supposed to want. The next evening, she was already there when I arrived, same corner table, same half-finished cup of coffee. She looked up as if she'd been waiting, though she said, You're late. I didn't want to seem too eager, I said, trying to sound casual. You failed, she replied, but the smile that followed softened the words. The air between us felt different this time, charged, fragile, like one wrong word could make it vanish. She was wearing something simple, a dark blouse that caught the light when she moved, and I couldn't stop noticing the small things. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, how her fingers traced the rim of her cup without realizing it. Did you tell anyone? She asked suddenly. No, good. Her voice was low, not playful this time, but careful. I understood. Whatever this was, it wasn't meant to be seen. We talked about small things at first, books, rain, the way people come and go from the same places without ever meeting. But every pause stretched longer, every silence heavier. She kept glancing toward the door, as if afraid someone might walk in. Then it happened. A voice, male, familiar, called her name from across the cafe. Her shoulders stiffened. I turned just enough to see him, mid-40s, sharp suit, the kind of confidence that comes from years of being certain. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. My colleague, she whispered quickly. Just stay. He walked over, oblivious to the storm beneath the surface. Didn't expect to see you here, he said, eyes flicking briefly toward me. Just catching up, she replied easily. A student. The word landed like a stone. Ah, he said, shaking my hand. She's everyone's favorite mentor. I smiled, said something polite, but my chest burned with quiet humiliation, not from the lie, but from how easily it had to be told. When he finally left, the silence that followed was unbearable. You didn't have to say that, I said quietly. Her hands tightened around her cup. Yes, I did. You think this looks wrong? She looked up then, and for the first time, her calm cracked. It is wrong. You're too young and I should know better. I leaned forward. But you don't stop thinking about it either, do you? She didn't answer. Her breathing changed, shallow, uneven. Say it, I whispered. That you've thought about, don't. Her voice trembled, not with anger but with something close to fear. If you say it, I can't pretend anymore. Her hand reached across the table, maybe to stop me, maybe because she couldn't help it, and our fingers met halfway. Neither of us pulled away. Outside, a car passed, its headlights gliding across her face. For a second, she looked like someone torn between wanting to run and wanting to stay. Then her phone buzzed. A message. She read it quickly, her expression unreadable. I have to go, she said, but didn't move. Then go, I whispered. Her fingers still rested against mine. You don't make it easy. Neither do you. Our faces were close now, too close. The air felt electric. One more breath and we'd cross a line that couldn't be undone. But she stood, her chair scraping softly against the floor. I can't, she said. Not yet. She walked out into the night without looking back. I sat there, her warmth still clinging to my skin, and for the first time, I knew this wasn't something either of us could keep hidden much longer. It had been 3 days since she walked out of the cafe, but the space she left behind still felt occupied by her scent, her silence, her unfinished sentence. I told myself not to go looking for her again. And yet, here I was, standing in front of her apartment building like someone rehearsing a mistake. The hallway light flickered. My hand hovered over the buzzer. Before I could press it, her door opened. She was there, coat half buttoned, keys in her hand, surprise washing over her face before she whispered, You shouldn't be here. I know, I said. But I had to see you. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Come in, before someone sees. Inside, the place was quiet, warm light, faint scent of tea and something floral. A single record played low in the background, something old and slow. She took off her coat but didn't turn toward me. You can't keep doing this, she said. Following me, showing up, I'm not following, I interrupted softly. I'm just not ready to stop. That made her pause. She exhaled, steadying herself. You don't understand what this could do to me. I think I do, I said. You're afraid someone will think it's wrong. That you'll lose control. But you already have. Her eyes snapped up, startled by the truth she didn't want spoken. You shouldn't say things like that. I stepped closer. Then tell me to leave. She didn't. Her breathing shifted, faster now, uneven. My heart matched it, beat for beat. I closed the distance until I could feel the warmth radiating from her. She looked up at me, eyes uncertain, lips parted just slightly. Don't, she whispered. You'll regret it. I already do. I reached up, gently brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Her skin was warm beneath my fingers. She didn't move away, just stood there, still, watching me as if she couldn't decide whether to breathe. You think this is just about wanting, she said quietly. But it's not. It's about everything we'll lose if we don't stop. And if we do? I asked. Her voice faltered. Then we'll spend the rest of our lives wondering. Something broke in the silence that followed, not loud, not visible, just a quiet surrender neither of us could undo. She stepped forward, so close that her shoulder brushed my chest. My hand found her arm, not pulling, just holding, like I needed proof she was real. The record hissed faintly in the background, the sound of time slipping through a narrow space. You shouldn't look at me like that, she murmured. Then stop standing so close. Her breath caught, a sharp inhale, a tiny sound that felt louder than thunder. Her fingers came up, tracing the edge of my collar, stopping at my throat. I felt the tremor in her hand before she dropped it. This can't happen, she said, but it sounded more like a plea than a warning. Then why are you shaking? She closed her eyes, her forehead brushing mine, her lips hovering an inch away. And then a knock. Sharp. Sudden. We froze. She stepped back, voice barely a whisper. Don't say a word. The knock came again, louder this time. She turned toward the door, heart still racing, eyes flicking once toward me before she went to answer. And just before her hand reached the knob, she looked back, the same look from that first night, a silent confession caught between fear and wanting. The moment teetered, one heartbeat away from everything changing. The knock that interrupted us that night didn't stop echoing, not in her hallway, not in my mind. She'd opened the door to no one, only the echo of a neighbor's retreating footsteps. Still, the spell had broken. After that, she disappeared again. Messages went unread. Days blurred into restlessness. I told myself it was for the best, that distance might burn the fever out. But when she finally called, her voice didn't sound distant at all. "Come by," she said. "We need to talk." The door opened before I could knock twice. She stood there in soft light, no makeup this time, eyes tired, as if she'd been fighting with herself for hours. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said. "I wasn't sure I should." Her mouth curved faintly. "That makes two of us." Inside, the room felt different, colder, maybe because she'd left the window open. Papers scattered on the coffee table, a half-empty glass of wine on the counter. Her hands trembled slightly when she reached to close the window. "There's something I should have told you," she said. "About what?" She hesitated, then met my eyes. "He knows." "Who?" "My colleague. The one from the cafe. He overheard us that night, not everything, but enough." I felt the air leave my chest. "What did he say?" "He asked if there was something between us." I told him no. That you were just someone I was helping. The words hit harder than I expected. "And you think he believed that?" "I don't know. But if he didn't, it doesn't matter. Word spreads fast in places that pretend to be professional." She turned away, pressing a hand to her temple. "I should have been more careful. You didn't deserve to be dragged into this." I stepped closer, my voice low. "Dragged? That's what this is to you." She looked over her shoulder, guilt flickering behind her eyes. "You don't understand how people will see it. I'm the one who should know better. You're an adult." I cut in. "Not your student. Not your project." Her silence was louder than any argument. I moved closer, the edge of anger dissolving into something more fragile. "So that's what this was for you? Something to fix before it ruins your reputation?" Her voice cracked. "No. This was the one thing that didn't feel wrong, until it did." The room stilled. She turned toward me fully now, hands trembling at her sides. "I tried to end it," she whispered. "But I kept thinking about you. About your voice. The way you look at me like I'm not a mistake waiting to happen." I reached out without thinking, fingers brushing her wrist. Her pulse jumped beneath my touch. "You think I care what they say?" I murmured. "You should." Her hand lifted, hesitant, trembling, to rest against my chest. "This won't end well." "Maybe not," I said, taking her hand in mine. "But it'll be real." The distance between us dissolved. One small movement, one breath too close. And just when it felt inevitable, she stepped back sharply, shaking her head. "He's already asked to meet with me tomorrow. If he says something, what will you do?" She swallowed hard. "Tell him the truth." "You mean that I can't stop thinking about you?" she said. The words hung in the air, dangerous, trembling, undeniable. Before I could answer, she opened the door, as if afraid of what might happen if I stayed a second longer. "Go," she whispered, "before I forget why I should." But as I stepped out into the hall, her fingers brushed mine one last time, a fleeting, wordless promise that this wasn't over. And for the first time, I knew it couldn't be. The next evening felt heavier than the rest, like the air itself knew something was about to break. She'd asked me to meet her at the park near the old bridge, the one that overlooked the city lights. The sky was turning violet when I arrived, wind brushing through the trees, carrying that faint chill of endings. She was already there, leaning against the railing, hands tucked into her coat. When she saw me, she smiled, small, restrained, but real. "You came," she said. "You asked?" She nodded, eyes dropping to the ground. "I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I should," I said, stepping closer. She turned toward me then, her hair catching the last of the light. "He knows," she said softly. "My colleague. He told me this morning. He's giving me a chance to end it quietly. To walk away before it turns into something ugly." "And you?" I asked. Her answer came out like a confession. "I don't know how." Silence settled between us. The sound of traffic hummed in the distance, but up here, it felt like the world had narrowed down to 2 heartbeats. "I thought about what you said," she continued, her voice trembling. "About being real. I've spent years avoiding that. Staying safe. Keeping everything controlled. And then you walked in, and I stopped recognizing myself." I took another step closer. "Maybe that's not a bad thing." She looked up, and for a moment, all the walls she'd built seemed to fall away. "You don't understand what this means for me." "I do," I said quietly. "And I don't care." Her eyes softened, not with surprise but relief. "You should," she whispered. "I could lose everything." "Then let me be the one thing you don't lose." Her breath caught. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain again, the same as that first night. I reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face, my fingers lingering longer than they should have. She didn't move. "Why do you keep looking at me like that?" she asked. "Because you make it impossible not to." Her lips parted slightly, her voice barely a breath. "If I let this happen, there's no going back." "Then stop me." But she didn't. She just stood there, close enough for me to feel the warmth radiating from her skin, her pulse quick beneath my fingertips. Her hand came up, resting against my chest. "You're shaking," she whispered. "So are you." Our foreheads touched, a quiet surrender without words. Her breath mingled with mine, the world shrinking to that thin, fragile space between almost and everything. "Tell me to go," I said. She closed her eyes. "I can't." "Then don't." The distance disappeared, just enough for her hand to slide up to the back of my neck, her voice trembling against my ear. "We're crossing a line." "I know," I whispered. "And we were always going to." For a long, suspended moment, we stayed there, not kissing, not moving, just breathing each other in, the gravity between us undeniable and quiet. Then she stepped back, tears caught in the corners of her eyes. "Now you understand," she said softly. "It was never about right or wrong. It was about what neither of us could undo." I nodded, unable to speak. And for the first time, the silence between us didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like truth. Whatever came next, we both knew, something had already begun, and neither of us would ever be the same. The next morning felt quieter than it should have. The city moved as it always did, cars, voices, the low hum of life, but somewhere between the night we shared and the dawn that followed, something had changed. I found myself walking toward the cafe again, though I didn't expect her to be there. Habit, maybe? Or hope. She was. Sitting by the window, hands wrapped around a cup of tea this time, not coffee. When she looked up, I saw something different in her eyes, not fear, not indecision, but the calm that comes after a storm has finally spent itself. I stood there for a moment, unsure whether to approach. Then she smiled, small and familiar, and that was enough. "Late again," she said as I sat down across from her. "I was giving you time to change your mind." She shook her head gently. "I already tried that. It didn't work." We both laughed, softly, nervously, as if our bodies were still catching up to what our hearts already knew. "I didn't sleep," she admitted. "I kept thinking about what happens now. And?" Her fingers traced the rim of her cup, that small, unconscious movement I'd come to recognize. "And I realized something. I've spent years doing what people expected of me. Playing safe. Being sensible. But nothing about you feels like a mistake." The words hit somewhere deep, not dramatic, not rehearsed, just true. I reached across the table, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Our hands met halfway, her skin warm, steady, the kind of warmth that stays. She looked down at our hands, her thumb brushing mine. "People will talk," she said quietly. Let them, I said. They haven't heard what we have. Her smile wavered, but her grip tightened. You make it sound simple. It's not, I said. It's just real. A long silence followed, comfortable this time, filled with everything we no longer needed to say out loud. The afternoon light slipped through the window, soft and golden, catching in her hair. When I reached to tuck a strand behind her ear, she didn't flinch. Her eyes closed briefly, and I felt her lean into my touch, a quiet surrender that said more than words ever could. Come here, she whispered. I moved beside her, and she rested her head against my shoulder. For a moment, everything around us faded, the chatter, the clinking cups, the world outside. It was just us, breathing in sync, two people who'd finally stopped pretending they didn't want what was already theirs. I don't know where this goes, she murmured. Neither do I said. But we'll find out together. She turned her face slightly, close enough for me to feel the warmth of her breath against my neck. That sounds like a beginning, she said. And it was. We sat there until the light dimmed, her hand still in mine, our reflection blurred in the window, two shapes leaning closer, not hiding anymore. Whatever rules we'd broken, whatever lines we'd crossed, the truth was simple. We'd both finally chosen to be seen.